Hello. Welcome everybody, listeners, to the third episode of the Danguage podcast. Couple of things. We have some new guests with us in the table. We also have a weird setup, but we'll talk about that later.
Setup.
If this is your first episode watching, I'm Ethan, and over on the other side is TN.
Hello.
And why don't we learn a bit more about our special guests who are here? So, fellows sitting here, what's your name, and what do you do during the week?
My name is Caleb. I am studying at the University of Sydney. I do lots of stuff. Hanging out with these guys in and around the Evangelical Union, which is one of the Christian groups there. And I go to church at a place called St. Stephen's Anglican in Normanhurst.
Cold.
W. Big man. Who are you?
I'm Jono. I also study at the University of Sydney. Also do a lot with the EU, Evangelical Union. Hanging out with these guys. I go to St. Paul's Carlingford. What else do you want to know?
Big.
That's cool. Any other fun things you want to share? Otherwise,
We can keep going.
no worries. Okay, so you may notice that our regular setup is the green pool table, but we have a very nice. We've got the red pool table and the nice
Bookshelf.
the book backdrop. And so the reason is, Tian, can you explain the reason why we're in a different setup today?
So currently, at this moment, what we wanted to do at Danguage podcast is keep at the green table. But
What's with the accent, man?
currently at the situation, Caleb is very far, and so we decided to
It's
go.
all Caleb's fault.
We decided to go to Jono, our hometown in this house.
If you want to know his address, leave a comment.
If you want it, it's on the Patreon. So we decided to go over here. He has a pool table, so it worked out. We are only recording on pool tables, so for future guests, if you want us to come over, you need a pool table.
I didn't know that either. There you go.
No,
Yeah, because me and Tian, we live in the southwest, and
It's
these
an
guys live
executive
in the trenches up in. Well, this guy lives in the north, and so
Yeah.
we're like, let's meet halfway, make it easier for everybody. And so here we are. I think it'll be good.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely closer to me than halfway, to be fair.
how long did it take you to
Yeah,
get
how
here?
long?
Like 20 minutes.
Oh
my
my
gosh.
days.
Actually, it was alright. It was like 40 minutes for us.
No, 40 minutes for you. It took me an hour.
Oh yeah, because he had to drive.
It was basically we drive an hour, he drives 1 hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're all here.
We're
that's really
accommodating.
dodgy. That's
the
really
Danguage
dodgy.
podcast is an
We're in
accommodating.
a great space, so
Yeah.
we thank you.
No, I appreciate your grace.
Family, we're very appreciative of letting us have your space.
That's right.
Alrighty, so how do we know each other? I think we'll start with, what's the oldest relationship? Oh, well, me and Tiana talked about how we know each other from school. Watch the other episodes if you haven't already.
Episode 1.
Episode 1. But I think apart from that, I've known Caleb for quite a while through something called... Well, actually, our parents also knew each other
Yeah.
when my parents first came to Australia.
Yeah.
That's another story.
Oh, where did they come from?
The nations.
Where did they come from?
They came from
Where did they come from?
from the UK and from Singapore, and they came to Australia to study at Bible college. Anyway, that's a long story of how they know each other. But I didn't know Caleb until I don't even know when. But we went to this thing called CMS Summer School, which sounds a bit nerdy, but it's basically it's a place where
It is pretty nice.
Christian adults are meeting to hear about mission, but there's also they run kids programs alongside.
Yeah.
So I don't know what year I would have met you there.
I don't know. Yeah. Just emerged and evolved into a beautiful
That's
friendship
right. That's right. And here we are
over
today.
time.
And
In
that's
God's
how I met
kindness.
Caleb. And then we've grown in our friendship, I think, after coming together at uni.
Wait, so how long would you say you've been friends or known each other for?
Probably like sometime in the first couple of years of high school, probably.
Yeah, I reckon. So maybe
Probably. Something like that.
8 or 9 years or something.
Yeah, something like that. Oh my goodness. That's a while.
Wow.
There you go. And then, smooth. Jono. I met Jono at a camp called Launch Camp. Jono, can you quickly explain what that is? In case there's people in the same situation that might benefit from
Yeah.
the camp.
Launch is a great camp. Especially if you're in year 12 or if you're going into uni next year. Search it up. It's run by 2A's Ministries, or Philip Jensen, if you've heard of him. It's a really good camp for getting your bearings before you head into uni. Really building up some strong foundations, in your Christian faith before uni.
So me and Jono-
Shameless plug there.
Exactly. And me and Jono, we might be there maybe, possibly, on the camp.
Definitely will be.
So that's an added bonus. But yeah, Jono was in my we're in the same cabin. That's right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's where we met, and then we've become quite close friends, I would say, from there. So go to launch camp, you'll meet great people, I think. Yeah, and then that's how I know these two guys. But TN is not the same, is it?
No, so I remember the day when Ethan was like, "Oh, Tian, I'm gonna go to this camp called Launch." I was like, "Huh?" And I thought, you know, first thing in my head, I'm like, "That's a stupid camp, bro. I'm not gonna go." Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna go because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go uni anyway. Like, who cares? Basically, I regret it, but it's all right. I still met these guys somehow. All right, there's
Somehow.
yeah, somehow, some way, whatever. Anyway, point is, I met Jono once mid-year of uni, so first year uni, I think 2024. We were at a camp, we talked about it last episode, at ANCON, which is the EU's between semesters 5-day camp. And it was actually on the last day. Me and Ethan just wanted to take a photo together because, like, that's lit. And I was like, we need a cameraman. And lo and behold, I see this guy. I'm like... And Ethan, and
Yeah,
I was with Ethan,
yeah, I already
and
knew
you came
Jono.
up to us.
This random guy on the street.
no. Yeah. Point is, I was like, I didn't even know him. I was like, who the heck is this guy? And Ethan's like, oh yeah, this guy's name's Jono. I'm like, doesn't he look like a Jono? And I'm like, actually,
Is that the first thing that comes up when you think you see anybody?
No,
Like,
no.
Do they look like a...
specifically for Jono's case, right? And you know what? When I looked at him, I'm like, this guy really reminds me of this one character. Now, if you know the movie Megamind, all right, basically Megamind is a villain, all right, but he becomes a hero, all right. And so why does he become a hero? Because there's another villain. There's another supervillain.
Supervillain.
There's another supervillain, and his name was called Titan, all right.
Titan.
Now, when I saw Jono for the first time, I'm like, this guy 100% looks like Titan. And so it's been a running joke that I call him Titan all the time. And
And he's a bit of a Titan as well. He's like pretty, you know.
Yeah.
Caleb, do you know Megamind? You know Titan from Megamind?
Oh mate, dude, I'm like so sad. This is a podcast. We can't like get his face. A bit of a comparison between.
No, they're
Oh,
editing.
I can put it in post.
Can you put it in post? Okay.
Yeah, we can
okay.
make it happen.
Okay. I just like I don't know how to describe to any listeners listening only audio version just how like breathtakingly similar they are. Yeah.
Just the magnitude of the
Yeah. Exactly. I just think, honestly, like when Tien said that, it actually like blew my mind. And I realized that Tien might be the biggest genius that this world has ever seen. Because
that's
it's
right.
I'm not that
That's
crazy.
the
but-
most astute comparison
Like,
between
yeah,
two people.
he
I've
teaches
ever
me
seen.
so much. He's such an
Titan and
inspiration.
Jono.
No, all
Yeah.
I say is I think these guys are really smart with the Bible, but you know what I'm really smart with? It's like comparing people to characters. And that's what I like doing. All right, guys.
Do you have any other comparisons?
Well-
for other people?
Well, I have a...
Oh, wait. Caleb.
I
Surely.
have
Easy
a
one
Caleb
for
one.
This
I have a
is
Caleb
crazy.
one. No. I gotta. You gotta show this
Unbeknownst
in
to anybody
post-production.
right now.
You gotta show this to post production. All right. Now, I don't really remember how I met Caleb, but I remember just meeting Caleb as the most like straight guy I know.
Wait, in what way?
like,
'Cause I don't know if we know the same Caleb.
I know the straight side of Caleb, and Caleb does not like anything.
Yeah, it's just
any homie actions, and like no bueno. All right. But point is, I remember when I met Caleb, W guy, chill, didn't really talk to him. But then the more we just like bud circles, because I was always hanging out with Ethan, and Ethan was hanging out with Caleb. And then actually what ended up happening was I visited something called Forums, which is like a Thursday evening Bible study or Bible, what would you call it?
Yeah, it's a study,
forum.
it's a seminar, a forum.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Seminar is good.
I still don't know.
Bit
even
of
know what
talk.
For the amount of
means.
plugs
Bit
we've
of
already
discussion.
done in like the first
No,
10
no.
minutes, it's
You're
crazy.
welcome, Philip
But
Jensen.
this all happens because we go to
Oh, what
things.
about
getting
what about
paid from
the new church he's planting?
Side note.
Too many plugs.
Hella
He
side
has to
note.
pay us a bit more.
The point is, I think something also really interesting is all four of us and two other mates, all second years now. Like we all actually no, but doesn't matter. We go to that thing and I think we just hang out together as a just friend group. The comparison I had for Caleb, all right, now you might not see it now, right, but I was basically me and Caleb were at a 21st party, all right, and I just wanted to take a selfie with him, and then when I took the selfie with him, like Caleb like put his mouth out, right, right, and then
As I do.
and
Yeah,
then
shots.
as soon as I saw that photo, I showed Ethan and Jono this, and they agree, right? Basically, you know Sesame Street?
Wait.
Yes.
Yeah, I know Sesame Street.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. I'm talking about Kayla's with that face exactly looks like Big Bird.
But he's not even yellow. We're the yellow ones.
No, but he just did. He just.
That's good.
I don't know if that's.
I'm glad I'm not
Is
the
that
one
why
saying
he can
this.
say hello?
He can say hero because of that.
Hero.
No. I reckon he looks like you know that show Prison Break?
Yeah.
The main character because of the buzz. Look
Oh,
at him, bro.
Yeah,
Look
do you
at
want to
him.
talk about
Fine.
that? Why do you have no hair? I actually don't even know the reason why you should
Like
have
I
hair.
literally it was just like literally it was just for funsies. Like I was just like I feel like at one point in my life I have to. And so
So you've always had like
I've always had like hair, you know.
Oh yeah.
No, Caleb always has really short hair,
But not
it's just
advice.
really curly. So yeah,
Yeah. No, honestly like my hair like you could pull it down to like the bottom of my nose.
Really?
But like yeah, but it was
Oh,
just
there's
like
no
it's
way.
really like tight
he's
curls.
got the
So
afro.
yeah.
I think it looks good.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah,
thanks,
no,
man.
That got cleaned up because after the fact, it was a bit.
Yeah, well,
A
when
bit
we were
of a
doing
small.
it, Jesse Cochrane, peace be upon him. Like, the clippers ran out like 80% of the way through, and it was pretty grim train ride home to be fair. But yeah,
Well, you
I know.
look terrible.
Yeah, do you have a
photo?
hoodie? You can
Yeah,
just,
I do have photos.
Okay, show us after.
Yeah. Have to put it in post maybe.
Yeah, we'll drop
There's
it.
a lot of post production now. Like I think we're going up in stages now.
You have to hire an editor for this one, I think. All right. Well, any other fun things we want to talk about? Otherwise, we could jump straight in.
To the game.
Oh, the game. That's right. Okay. I'll talk about a bit about the game. So, we introduced the game last
Last
episode.
episode.
I talked about it a bunch last episode, where it came from. So, if you want to listen to it, go listen to that episode. But basically, how it works, it's one of those games where you're gonna have to guess what Bible story I'm talking about, but I'm gonna be phrasing it in a way that is kind of I've changed the context, so it's not as clear what's going on. So I'll give you an example. I'll read out last week's and I'll tell you the answer, and then if you don't want to listen to the answer, you can
Skip it.
go listen to the other episode right now.
Too
Or
late.
skip past it. Okay, so basically, last week, it went like this. So this story is titled Corporate Policy Backfire. And it goes, middle management refuses to endorse mandatory loyalty demonstrations for the company's figurehead. And as punishment, they're subjected to lethal workplace machinery, but mysteriously they are delivered unharmed.
Is this just Egypt?
Not exactly.
Oh, okay.
Any ideas coming from that? I mean, this is not the
No,
one which
nothing.
focusing
Yeah,
on
we're
today.
This is a Bible story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Middle
So middle management refuses to endorse mandatory loyalty demonstrations for the company's figurehead, and as punishment, they're subjected to lethal workplace machinery. Mysteriously, they are delivered unharmed.
Wow.
I'll give you a couple of seconds, otherwise I'll
Yeah,
reveal
we
the
gotta
answer.
speak.
I would have said slavery in Egypt as well.
Yeah.
I mean, who's the figurehead? Like,
Yeah.
Could it be
That's
like
a good
Aaron?
question.
It'll make sense
Aaron
when you
and
see
the
it.
ball? Aaron?
So
Alright, okay,
the
don't
story
worry.
was Eli and Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
yeah, okay.
Right, so middle
Fire
management,
furnace.
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah,
refuse
yeah.
to endorse
they
loyalty
are- yeah,
demonstrations,
true.
That's
Yeah.
valid.
and they're subjected to lethal
Bro,
workplace
okay,
machinery.
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that, that's how the game
Alright,
works.
so I think
Okay,
this
yeah,
episode,
yeah,
you
right.
guys.
Yeah.
is the-
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
this one's a bit. This one's interesting as well.
This is all ChatGPT, guys.
This is basically all ChatGPT as
This is
well.
our friend.
I was meant to prepare
Chat.
like last night, but I forgot. So I prepared it here in like 15 minutes before we started
I was
recording.
meant to get a good night's sleep, but I was just watching the Ryder Cup, like the golf. Like it's
Side note,
literally
hella
golf
side
match
note.
Bro, these,
for like no reason.
hey,
Nah,
these
I was
guys,
with my
they,
brother, which was
I
nice.
think we just have to drop that they haven't listened to the podcast.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
I was saying I tried to rate the podcast on Spotify. I was like, oh yeah, I'll like rate it so that the algorithm recommends it or whatever. Is there a Spotify algorithm? I don't know.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
And it was like you have to listen to the show first before you rate it, and like it still didn't give you motivation. To, like,
That's so mean, bro. Come on, man. And you're a guest. You're the second
no, I'm
guest.
kidding. I'm kidding. I will listen to it after this.
Yeah,
Maybe
he'll listen to his
Probably.
episode.
No, he
Maybe.
I'll listen to 5 minutes of our episode. No, I'm kidding. I actually I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Alrighty, well let's read out this week's one. This one's titled "Office Party Intrusion." So, security is breached at a high-profile gala. An incorporeal appendage leaves an ominous message, spelling doom for the entire corporation.
Oh, is it?
that?
Wait. Yeah, he pumped it.
Let's go.
Wait, you didn't even let the guests
Hey,
figure it
look.
out.
Oh,
Yeah.
Come on, man.
You can just put the intro music there.
yeah. Just bleep it. I think that would be great.
Okay, I'll believe it. Okay, imagine the Caleb hasn't said anything yet. All right, guys. What do you guys think it is? Any thoughts about what that could possibly mean?
I have no idea.
Tiem, do you have any thoughts about this one?
I was thinking it was like Revelations. Something
Revelation.
Like that. In Revelation. I don't know, but that was my thought.
Well, yeah. If you want to think about it, basically how it was meant to go. I forgot to say.
Sorry.
We drop it at the end of the episode. The answer.
Right at the end.
It was just supposed to get some thoughts and then.
Oh,
let
sorry.
That's right. We
Yeah,
can
sorry, we
still
actually
bleep
haven't,
it out.
watched
and
the
they
podcast
still don't know
yet.
what the answer is right now.
Yeah, they don't know.
And so we can come back at the end and then
Yeah,
you can.
You can explain the story for us.
He's just too quick.
Are there any more?
No,
No,
that
that
was
was
one.
just
It's-
the one. I didn't think
One
it would be.
GBT, another one.
one
right
game,
now.
man.
On the
I
spot.
didn't think it would be so easy, but I guess it was.
I've never heard. I don't
think-
even know what the story
I
Yeah,
think
is.
it's just
good.
that you said corporeal. Like it was. I was like, what else is that supposed to mean? Other than,
Well,
like-
and the message of doom as well. Is,
yeah.
Maybe you guys are just too locked in. I think.
Maybe.
I don't.
well,
Think,
we
I don't think so,
could
no,
not get
but-
the first one.
Yeah,
so-
no.
Yeah,
but
I think probably the
second
first one was harder. Anyway,
one. Yeah, sure.
that's the game. I hope you enjoyed that segment.
dang, that's crazy.
Are we moving forward?
Dang.
Sorry.
Language.
Hey, speaking my language.
All right, I think let's move forward and start getting into some of the stuff we're going to be talking about this week. So, in our previous episodes, we've referred to the Bible a lot, and I'm sure basically every listener who's listening has heard of the Bible before. So this episode, the plan is to kind of give a very high level overview of the Bible as a whole, make things clear that might not be clear, especially for people who aren't so familiar with the Bible. And we'll be kind of breaking it down, going through the Old Testament and then a bit into the New Testament, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I guess a question I'll throw to you guys is, how would you how's the Bible split up? How's the Bible split up? And we'll go from there, I think. What are some different sections? What's the big kind of separator?
The big separator.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. There's obviously we have the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Right. And what does that mean, basically?
Yeah, I mean, another word for testament is like covenant or like kind of agreement with God, I guess. So in the Old Testament, there was, an old agreement with God, and now we have a new one with Jesus in the New Testament.
And we'll talk about this as well. But basically, yeah, it's a way of just dividing the Bible up as to it's split right down the middle when Jesus arrives, and he's the start of the New Testament. Okay, and then what are some sections of the Bible as well that people might have heard of before? Some sections of the Bible.
You got the Torah.
Yeah.
So, okay, what's the Torah?
Yeah.
Torah means instruction.
Wow.
So it's
What the heck?
teaching and like kind of do this.
Okay, and what are some of those
and-
books that people might know that are in the
Oh,
Torah?
yeah. I can't remember the actual lines.
Well, I think the Torah is the first 5 books. So like
Yeah,
another word is like the
The
Pentateuch.
Well, okay, big word. What the heck is that?
We're not
Penta
speaking
meaning
his
5.
Yeah,
And then
bro.
Juke?
Tuke.
I don't know actually.
I don't know what's
So-
what's a
It's
tuke?
made-
It could be like language or something. I have no
Maybe.
idea.
Someone smart will know.
Maybe Danguage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah. So like the first 5 books of the Bible are kind of like what you might call the law. So the law meaning like the law that kind of God handed down to his people Israel through Moses, who was kind of
so Moses is there.
Author.
Other people like Abraham,
Yeah.
Noah, creations
yeah.
right at the beginning. That's all like the Torah kind of stuff, and then
Yeah. So that's where like Adam and Eve fits in right at the start.
and then
Yeah, and then like sin. There you have sin enters the world.
and we'll break this down a bit later, as well. So we've got sin, and then what? Any other big things that happen in the start? I guess not really. We kind of talked about it, but
in the opening session.
yeah.
Well, I mean, so there's God creates a good world, a very good world, and then sin enters the world through people choosing to reject God, and then everything kind of just like spirals downwards. And so a lot of the Old Testament is this kind of downward spiral of humanity just rejecting God, and God in His mercy choosing a people in Israel to rescue time and time again, but still they continue to reject him, and that is kind of like the pattern of a lot of the Old Testament.
It is, because like, what are some other parts of the Old Testament? There's the Torah, and then we've got some history as well with all the kings and stuff, which we'll get to as well. And so that kind of reiterates that pattern over and over again. And then we've got prophets as well.
Major and minor.
Yeah, we got major prophets and more minor prophets.
Well, but that's just like literally by the size of the books.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
But
All prophets matter.
There are different types of prophets. Like there are apocryphal prophets. Random other words. I'm not going to explain that.
So if you've ever heard,
I don't even know.
If you've heard of like famous Bible people like Elijah and Isaiah, they're all prophets. That's what we call prophets. And then
and by prophets we mean not like necessarily in the same sense that we use, just like fortune telling. We don't really mean by that, but it means like people who are speaking on God's behalf to the people. And so sometimes that looks like warnings from God to his people about what will happen in the future if they continue to reject him. But a lot of the time as well, it's also it's also messages of a call to repentance. So that means to turn away from their rejection of God and to turn back to God. That's a big kind of role of the prophets in the Old Testament.
yeah, kind of like little like the good guys scattered throughout, bringing bringing God's message to his people in a way. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then but there also is a little bit of the fortune telling action that goes on in some of the prophets,
Oh, yeah.
like,
Fortune telling.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think there's a really cool pattern, and this is throughout like most of the Old Testament. You see in creation, right? God says things, and then they happen, right? He says, "Let there be water." There's water. His words are powerful. But you see that actually in the rest of the Old Testament, like most of the books will have God saying something, and then the rest of the book is that being carried out.
Ooh.
So yeah, God's word is powerful.
there you go.
We'll see that more later. Hey?
We will. Okay, so that's a
Old Testament.
very high level of the Old Testament. Okay, New Testament. We've got gospel, and then we've got bit of church history in Acts, and then we've got letters. So what's the gospel? Firsthand, you might hear of
Episode
the
1.
gospels. Yeah, the gospels. What's the gospel?
That's episode 1.
If you want to listen a lot about it, listen to episode 1.
What did you guys say? No, I'm kidding.
I can't do the TLDR on episode 3, man. But
Well, I mean, there's different ways that we use the word gospel. If we're going in a language point of view, like we use the word gospel, which means good news. So we use the word gospel to just mean the gospel, as in what is the good news about Jesus. And like Jesus is kind of the defining split between Old Testament and New Testament. But yeah, like the gospel is the good news about Jesus, that Jesus, as I'm sure you guys have explained already, that Jesus came to bear the penalty for our sin, so that if we put our faith in him and ask him to forgive us, we can be forgiven, and our relationship with God can be restored, not because of what we've done, but because of God's kindness to us. So like, you might talk about the gospel in that sense, but you also have the gospels, which are just the books that are like the actual biographies of Jesus' life. So that's a helpful little language distinction.
4 of those, four biographies of Jesus' life. Then we've got one book about some of the
early church history.
Yeah, early church history. That's the book of Acts. And then after that, we hear a lot about Paul. There's about all these letters you might have heard of, like Romans, Corinthians, Ephesians. They're all letters that the Apostle Paul has written to after Jesus. We might talk about that a bit later. But that's basically the rest of the New Testament, right? And then some other letters as well, written by some other big people. But I think the crux of it is the Gospels at the start of the New Testament. And then it might seem like we've kind of talked about Jesus and how cool his message is, but the idea behind today is that we're going to present how the Old Testament actually fits into all this. It's not just like, there was this story that came before and then it ended, and then now there's Jesus and he's bringing this good message. But no, actually there's a reason that it's an Old Testament and a New Testament, and that it's still part of the Bible. And so we hope to flesh that out, I think. So I reckon we'll go back to the start, and we'll try and give a short outline of the Old Testament story by explaining some of the high and low points of the story. So I think we'll start with probably one of the most famous things that people will know from the Bible, and that's creation. So that's in the first couple of chapters of Genesis. can someone give a short rundown of what happened in the creation story?
Genesis 1.
Genesis 1.
1:1.
In the beginning, God.
Created the
Beginning.
heavens and the earth.
That's right.
That's verse 1.
Facts.
I mean, that's a pretty good summary, to be honest, of those couple of chapters.
Mm.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about creation? What happened in creation?
Jono.
oh, really? Okay. I don't know. I think there's a really cool structure if you actually go into it. God, on the first 3 days, makes 3, like vessels. I don't know how to say it. Like land, air, sea.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's like the land, the sky.
And
the
then
sea,
yeah. That's what I mean. I'm just saying it in a weird way. And then he fills them in the next 3 days. Birds in the sky, animals on the ground, animals in the sea, and he makes us. He creates us in his image, which is very cool.
What do you think that actually means, to be made in the image of God?
I think it means that like we bear the characteristics of God in many ways, not in every way. And Christians often use this language of like fallen image bearers, right? And so obviously that ties into sin after what we're going to talk about. But the idea is that, you know, the idea of being made in God's image is that God has made us to be his representatives in a way in the world, to be people who have, you know, like basic morality and compassion and empathy, all those qualities that God has, right? But creative, intelligent thought, that kind of thing. And obviously we don't represent that even nearly to the extent that God does. God is perfectly loving and perfectly just and all-knowing and all those things, right? But in many ways we resemble him in a way that nothing else in creation does. But yeah, then as we'll see with sin, it means that we don't bear his image very well in lots of ways as well. And so we are prone to injustice and to reject loving others and all of these things that mean that we don't bear God's image as well as we were supposed to because of the fact that we've rejected him. So yeah.
Yeah. So we're created in God's image, but not like physically. We're not saying that we look like what God would look like, but rather we bear on his character. We take on some of his characteristics, as you said. So God creates the world. He creates man to kind of rule over the creatures of the land. And before anything goes wrong, they're in this place called the Garden of Eden. How would you describe the dynamic of the relationship that the people, or Adam and Eve, have with God at that point? Just so that it'll make clear what kind of goes bad. What would you guys say?
Oh, well, you see, I think you see there in the Garden of Eden, God legit dwells with Adam and Eve. So he walks alongside Adam and Eve. So in that moment, at the start of creation, when God created humans, he's legit just chilling with them.
In whatever way, I don't think we know exactly what that might look like. But
God was just chilling.
like, come on, man.
He's a chiller.
And then what you see? Are we gonna go to the next part?
Maybe we'll flesh out that kind of relationship a bit more. Like they were in. Was there anything you think that was bad about that relationship? In the same way that many of our relationships, even though they might seem good, often have kind of bad things about them.
Yeah, I think you see this like clear openness between Adam and Eve. That's like very unique in that situation where, Adam and Eve in that moment were naked, had nothing was not shameful, and I think in that sense it's different. And even in our human relationships now, how we relate to one another, there is still a sense of like we don't show 100% of ourselves with one another, but in that moment with Adam and Eve and God, Adam and Eve showed everything to God, and God was open to them as well.
Anything else to add from you guys about that? Alrighty.
I think that's good.
Well, let's move on from there. So in just the next chapter after Genesis 2, we reach what's known as the fall, and it's the story of Adam and Eve and what happens with the serpent. So could someone very quickly break down what happens in the story? Just what happens?
Yeah. So there was a serpent, there was Adam, there was Eve, and there was a tree. there was one tree of the knowledge of good and evil that God commanded Adam and Eve to not eat from. It was the one tree in the garden they couldn't eat. But then this serpent comes in and he starts talking to Eve. He's like, just do it. Yeah,
Just do it.
No, and Eve looks at that, looks at the apple. She looks at it and she deems it to be desirable. And then she eats it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of is the beginning of like mankind's rejection of God. And from that moment, like it's actually amazing when you read it, like how instantaneous the switch is into just total
Chaos.
And rejection of God. Like sin just like takes over, and like that's kind of this like one of the big ideas in the Bible is that sin, like all people sin, right? Don't ever get the impression from Christians that that Christians don't sin, right? No, actually the Bible says that everybody's sinned, everybody's rejected God, and that's a real issue. Like, and so once they sin, immediately they just play the blame game, and Adam says, oh, like the woman you put here with me, God, like she made me eat it, and then Eve says, oh, the snake deceived me and I ate it, right? And then God, in His justice, essentially pronounces like judgment on them, right? As He said that He would, right? Actually, in His mercy, they don't die on the spot, right? Which is the penalty for sin, as the Bible says, is death, right? And the reason for that is that if God is the one who gives us life, then when we reject the giver of life through sin, God gives us what we've asked for in a sense, which is death. And
I guess you could compare it to like cutting the stalk of a flower.
Yeah.
Where you're no longer connected to the source of life. You still, like we live lives, but we are ultimately always dying.
Yeah. And like, and God, God essentially kind of, like pronounces judgment on the serpent and on the woman and on the man. And so in this way, like all mankind is under the consequence of sin, which is death, right? That's the reason why we die. That's the reason why there's brokenness and sickness and everything that kind of sucks like in the world is because of our sin, is because of our choice to reject God. And that's the great tragedy I guess kind of the start of humanity. So
Yeah. And as you were saying before, there were consequences. Later in that chapter, it says how the man's labor will be tiresome, and childbearing for the woman will be painful. But also it says that an offspring of the woman will crush the head of the serpent when it strikes the man's heel. And so there's kind of this image that God hasn't just left it be, but something is going to be done about whatever the serpent is meant to represent. We think probably it's not just some dude's going to step on a snake's head and that's going to be it. But there's some image of something that's going to kind of address the poor things that have just taken place. And so, that's what we get when we come out of the fall. We get that the world has become broken, but still there's a hint of some sort of redemption from there.
Yeah. I think if you want like a complex term, I think people call it like the proto-evangelion, which just means like proto, like
Far
like
out,
first.
Wait, stop using.
He's explaining right now.
This is for the Danguage podcast, man. Like proto, like first. Evangelion being like basically just like the Greek word for like good news, so that gospel word that we were saying earlier. You kind of get what people call that proto-evangelion, which is like the first kind of hint of the gospel, right? Which is that God would God would send a man to crush whatever that serpent represents, which it seems to be sin and the devil.
Okay, and then kind of after that we kind of see evil is in the world. We get some stories. We have we get the story of Cain and Abel. What's another small story that happens right after that? He's another big dude in Genesis. We got Noah in the ark.
Yeah.
Because what happens in that story, very briefly, just like a quick summary of what happens in Noah and the ark story. What happens?
Bro goes sailing.
We're sailing. Why?
Everybody else does not go sailing.
Why is there so much water? Why is there a big flood?
Well, everyone's doing some naughty things.
Yeah.
God's like, I don't like humanity. Well, he doesn't say it like that. But he sends a big flood. But he warns Noah. He tells
Why
him,
did he warn Noah? Or how was Noah different to you, the other people?
I thought Noah was just a chill dude.
Chill dude.
And I thought he just followed.
Be a chill dude, go to heaven.
I thought he just like followed Jesus, and then I followed God, and then like God in that moment, God was like, "Man, humanity sucks."
Yeah.
But Noah's like sort of faith, like he's faithful.
Yeah,
And
I think it's
so-
that he was faithful to God and his commands.
And so he was like, Noah, like, build a boat and bring a male and a female of every animal, put them in the boat. I'm gonna flash flood this place, and he basically floods the entire earth.
Yeah.
And then Noah comes out, all the animals come rolling out as well.
Yeah.
And then God's like, I'm not gonna do this again. But remember, look at the sky when it rains, and after that there's a rainbow. That rainbow is my promise to you that this won't happen again.
Yeah, and that all came as a result of human evil, I think. So we won't talk about that too much. We'll move on from Noah, and we reach. We'll talk a bit about Abraham, who's kind of another big guy in the Christian world.
Mm-hmm.
Who is Abraham? Who is he? Is he just some
Abram.
random dude? Or Abram.
Abram,
Sorry,
yeah,
who's
bro.
Abram? What does Abram mean? What's an Abram?
What does
Caleb,
Abram
help
mean?
us.
What is an Abram?
Abram means father, I think, right?
I think so,
And then Abraham means father of many. And so Abraham is just he's like the ancestor of all of the people of Israel. And so God essentially just takes this dude Abraham, right, and makes all these promises to him by his kindness. He kind of makes these three big promises to him. He says he's going to give him land, blessing, and descendants, right? And that kind of image of the descendants being as numerous as the stars in the sky. And God, asks Abraham to try and count the stars in the sky, and he can't. And God says, that's how numerous your descendants are going to be. And then he says, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you, right? And so Abraham is kind of, I guess you could say, the genetic predecessor of every person who is like ethnically Jewish, or ethnically Israelite, same thing. And then for the Christian, he's also the kind of first big model of like faith. And actually, in Romans 4, it talks about it has kind of this, like Paul has this argument in Romans 4 of Abraham being this first kind of model of somebody whom God counted righteous because of his faith, right? And so Abraham kind of sets up this picture for the Bible that righteousness, or that idea of being right with God or declared right with God, is not based on what we have done, because all of us have rejected God and all of us sin, right? But actually it's based on what God has done for us in his kindness to us in forgiving us, right? So Abraham is declared righteous by faith because of his faith in God. Ultimately, the reason for that, I would say, is Jesus, because of what God would do in Jesus. But would you agree, Johnny? He's kind of that first model of living by faith.
Yeah, and that's picked up in Hebrews as well, and James.
That's right. It's everywhere.
All over the place. But yeah, I think those three big promises are like crucial. They come up. You see God fulfilling those again and again in the Old Testament, and then ultimately through Jesus.
Yeah, I think it's that all the world will be blessed through Abraham and his line. Okay, so that's Abraham and some of the things that God has promised to his people through Abraham. So fast forward a bit, we move through the story of Abraham's descendants, so Isaac and Jacob, and then we reach Joseph and the story of his rainbow coat and his brothers who sell him into slavery and or who kind of dump him in a well, is it right? And then he gets picked up and he becomes, this is a whole story we won't talk about too much. And then stuff happens after that. And then where does that leave Israel after the story of Joseph? And they're now...
So where's the story of Joseph in the Bible timeline? Do you know?
Basically after Genesis. This is just that I'm right at the end of Genesis right now.
Yeah. Joseph is
Yep, and we've just finished Genesis 50, and where Joseph he's reunited with his brothers, and then now we hit Exodus 1, and we've got a problem with Egypt. So what's going on there?
Yeah. Well, the Israelites were just multiplying and multiplying. They're going bigger and bigger.
They're multiplying like
They go
babies.
crazy.
On
They were growing in number and quickly. But the Pharaoh at the time was like, hang on, this is a problem. There is so many of them. They're going to outgo us as the Egyptians, you know? So what do? They put them into slavery.
Yep.
They put them to work, building some big pyramids. And
Is this actually facts? It's like the Tower of like Pyramid of Giza. What was it?
I
I don't know
so.
about that. I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So no, not that. Okay.
Not that pyramid.
Maybe if you want to believe it.
I don't know.
I wouldn't blame you.
They were building pyramids and stuff.
Okay, so it's like Israel is in slavery.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're killing a bunch of babies. The Egyptians.
Because there's just too many people.
Yeah, too many of them.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
They're in slavery.
Pretty bad situation.
Yeah.
Seems like things are going wrong. They used to be kind of God's kind of people, but then now it's a bit cooked.
Yeah.
But some babies made it past. One important baby as well. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Shaboom. Like, and so it's like, yeah, so.
Why'd you say shaboom, man?
Shaboom.
I don't know, man. I'm so locked out right now.
From the Cars movie.
Hi, let's lock it. So I'm assuming this baby is Moses.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Wait. So like, what's the story of like how Moses was Moses? Is this a story about how like the baby was put into the
Pharaoh's,
lake?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pharaoh's
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
water.
Yeah.
Picks
And
him
then-
up.
Sister and his
Yeah.
brother.
So Moses actually means I drew him out of the river is what the name Moses means. And so
Oh, snap.
so Moses kind of gets put in a basket by his mother, who kind of got him past without getting him killed by the Egyptians, who were kind of killing all the newly born Hebrews.
And then a princess.
Yeah, and so Pharaoh's daughter picks him up. And in the movie The Prince of Egypt, Pharaoh's daughter like raises him, but actually that's not exactly right. Like I think like Moses' mother actually raises him, but like with Pharaoh's daughter's permission. And then eventually Moses goes to live with Pharaoh's daughter, I think, and Pharaoh's family. After he's like I think like 8 or something. I don't really know, but he's kind of weaned and like raised as a boy, and then he goes to live with the Egyptians. So
Yep. So we got this Moses guy, and then after kind of seeing an image of where Israel is in their slavery, what is it that Moses what happens with Moses? What's the point of him? And we'll get to like the plagues and stuff, but what does God say to Moses?
what does God say to Moses?
Or what's his relationship with Moses? What are they going to do? What's their plan?
Well, I think their first encounter is like with the burning bush, right? Where God is telling him that he's the God of Moses' fathers, and that God is going to use Moses to lead the people out of slavery out of Egypt. And then Moses is kind of like, nah, not me.
Yeah.
Oh, so he had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Massively
Among
actually.
us.
Yeah.
Wait, which one of us? Which one of us is sus?
The imposter is sus, bro.
Anyway, so point is,
Lock in.
Moses gets confronted by God, and he's like, "Hell nah, it's not me." But then, what ends up happening after that?
Well, after that, Moses does actually go to Egypt, and his brother Aaron speaks for him. God's like, okay, that's fine. But he does go to Pharaoh, and with Aaron, tells Pharaoh to let God's people go, so they can go and worship God out of Egypt. And Pharaoh is just like, nah, right? And so and he says that a bunch of times, and that's where you kind of get the story of the plagues, right? Like the 10 plagues.
So there's a lot happened here. We'll kind of skip through, but basically, God is bringing some sort of judgment or punishment on Egypt at that time, and he does that through all different plagues. So what are some examples of them? There's
Locusts,
boils,
The water,
Darkness.
the water
Blood.
turns
Water turns to blood. Yeah.
yeah, and then
And then the last
final
one's the
one.
important one, where all the firstborns die, unless you've painted blood on
the doorway.
your door frame.
okay, well, who
Your
told them to
doorpost.
do that though? Why do they do that? Did they just do it because they thought it was like?
Yeah, well, no. So God instructed Israel to kill a lamb, right? For each household, and to paint its blood on the
Unblemished lamb.
yeah, sorry, that's right.
Yeah,
To paint its blood on on their door frames, basically. And yeah, it's a bit of a gory image, right? But the point of that, and actually it helps to set up the way that we think about a lot of the sacrificial system in the Old Testament. So the way in which God instructed Israel to have these sacrifices for their sin, right? So that they might be forgiven for their sin, is an important idea. And so when the Israelites did that, right, the angel of the Lord would pass over their house and wouldn't take the life of their firstborn son because the life of that lamb had been taken in its place, right? And that's a super, super, super important idea that points forward to Jesus really well, right? Because the Bible is super clear that, in Hebrews it talks about how the blood of bulls and goats and animals, right, can't take away sins, right? And so clearly it's a symbol, right? It's a very important symbol, but it's a symbol of what God was eventually going to do, what God's actual solution to taking away our sin would be one day in Jesus, who's kind of this perfect lamb who substitutes himself in our place, right? Because we were talking about how the punishment for sin is death.
Yep.
So Jesus substitutes himself in our place. And in that way, he is our Passover lamb, and God's judgment passes over us because it's passed on to Jesus. And that's this massive idea that sort of story with the Exodus and the Passover and Moses sets up. It actually points forward to Jesus. Interesting that Jesus dies on the Passover, right? And so even in the New Testament, you get you get that God has very clearly set up this whole Passover system to point forward to what he's eventually going to do in Jesus.
Yeah, so the angel of the Lord comes, passes over the Israelite houses who have painted the blood. But then what happens to Pharaoh? Because his
son dies.
His son dies.
And then he's like, I'm going to let the people go.
Yeah.
The people go, but then Pharaoh changes his mind.
He's
He's like, hang on, I want to kill him.
It's like,
the Israelites kind of like, they're on their way, right?
Yep.
And then they see all these armies coming. They're like, dude,
cooked,
Moses,
bro.
you were leading us, you led us astray. But then Moses
ults.
waves his wand, the Red Sea parts because God told him to.
Yep. They're going through.
And the Israelites get through, and then they get through. Red Sea comes back together, kills a bunch of Egyptians, and they're safe. Should we speed through to Kings?
I think let's talk about, we've got a bit of stuff to cover in what happened in the desert.
Yeah.
So they're sitting in the desert.
Wait. So let's get it clear. So basically Moses takes them. All right.
They're out of Egypt. So
They're out of Egypt.
They've
They're
been
chilling.
freed from slavery.
And then now they're just walking.
Yeah, because they've been promised something about a land that they're going to reach. Something called the Promised Land. It's a theme that comes up throughout as well in Genesis. And
that's one of the three promises to Abraham? Is it that one or?
Land,
land.
Yeah. And super importantly, just before the wandering, actually, the Israelites come out of Egypt and they go to Mount Sinai, right, which is where God gives them the law.
That's right.
And so that's where God lays down. Yeah, that's where God lays down. Yeah, stuff like the Ten Commandments, or basically a lot of laws on what it means to live as God's saved people, right? And so
because they've just been saved, so now they need to live as saved people.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it's interesting the order, right? God saves first. Doesn't depend on what the Israelites did. He saves by his mercy, and then there's the importance of living the way that saved people should be living. Yeah,
that's right. But it also is quite apparent that it's probably quite difficult to keep every single one of either the Ten Commandments or the other rules that God gives to his people. So as they get the Ten Commandments from Moses on the mountain from God. And then they're it seems like they're trying to go to the promised land, or the land that they've been promised, and they're just kind of sitting in, they're just sitting in the desert right now, and they're just trundling along, and they're kind of like not very happy. But what is another thing that, actually, I guess I'm just trying to hint at what happens in the sacrificial system you talked about a bit before in the Exodus. What kind of system does God institute for them to be able to kind of reconcile with not being able to uphold every single law that God has given them?
Is that the Leviticus?
Yeah, so we're kind of this whole this whole kind of section takes place across the
Multiple books?
next 3 books of the Torah. So starting at Leviticus, I mean, there's some stuff in Exodus as well. But we're starting at Leviticus, and we hear about these. God has appointed the men of the tribe of Levi, which are one of the tribes of Jacob, and those people are appointed to be the priests. What's a priest in this context, do you think? Pretty loaded word, definitely.
I guess, well, like priests are the ones who carry out God's will and help us, I mean, have a relationship with him in a way. I don't know, Caleb, do you have a strong definition for priest?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say like priests in the context of the Old Testament are sort of like the mediators between God and man, like kind of like the middleman, right? And so, yeah, like the priests were the one who performed the sacrifices as God had commanded, right? Which were symbolic sacrifices to show that God had forgiven the Israelites if they did the sacrifices, right? And so, yeah, there were a bunch of different sacrifices that the Israelites would have to do. But the Israelites might bring, you know, like a lamb or something, or they would bring something from their flock or sort of like the best from their flock as a sacrifice, and then the priest would sacrifice it, and it would be a symbol that God had taken away their sin and forgiven them, right? And so, yeah, but you get this, you get a lot of pictures of how the priests are very, very imperfect, and stuff up heaps, right? And they also themselves need sacrifice for sin is the other thing, okay? And so, yeah, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament is a great one to read on this, and how Jesus is sort of the perfect great high priest who didn't need sacrifice for sin himself because he never sinned, right? And how he was a perfect middleman between us and God, right? And actually, the really incredible thing is that he doesn't sacrifice a lamb, but he is the lamb that sacrifices himself for us, right? So he is the sinless lamb. So the whole point of that sacrificial system is like, people are sinful, and then here's this symbol of a lamb that is not sinful, right? That is, you know, symbolized as pure, right? Yeah, and so that lamb is punished in the place of the guilty person, so that the guilty person, the punishment for their sin is paid for, and the lamb takes their punishment in their place.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Jesus does ultimately.
Yeah. So we're seeing that God is kind of given the Israelites this way for them to kind of turn God's anger away from them to something else, that they don't have to face death immediately. And so it's, yeah, he's given them kind of a way to deal with the wrongdoing that's happening. But again, you were saying that there's some incompleteness about how exactly that works, because the priests who are meant to intercede, they themselves are sinful, and they have to intercede for their own sin as well, and then they have to deal with their own sin as well. And then there's also the fact that they have to keep doing it over and over again. There's not like a final, they kill one animal and their sins are kind of looked past for their whole life. But there's still a sense of incompleteness in kind of what's going on there. And so you're saying that kind of Jesus is able to fulfill all these problems with how man was meant to be connected with God. That's what you're kind of saying there, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's a brief overview of that system. Anything else to kind of comment on that? Otherwise, we'll move on.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Let's get it.
All right, let's end it. So, after that, Moses, God tells Moses that he's not going to reach the promised land. He's not going to see the promised land himself. But at the end of Deuteronomy, right at the end of Deuteronomy, they essentially, after wandering the desert for 40 years, they finally reach the land of the promised land. That's right. And Moses is gone. And then they got this guy Joshua, and he leads them. They got another river crossing into the promised land. And so it seems like things are going well. They're triumphing over places like Jericho. The walls come down. You might have heard that with the trumpets. And they're defeating all these armies. But yet there's still sin that's happening. We have the sin of, what's his name? Achan or something, where he holds the loot with him, and then you know that story?
Yeah.
Where they go and they plunder. I forgot if it's Jericho. I think it is Jericho, and they're meant to go and plunder or something. And this one guy takes some of the stuff for himself that he was commanded not to. And so even if I didn't get the story right, we still see that there's lots of sin still remains. So they're in this promised land, but there's still sin. It's still in the hearts of the people. Things are still going wrong. And then we kind of see things start to get bad. So we've reached kind of this place where Israel starts to get into bad positions with the surrounding nations, and there's lots of kind of conflict that's going on, and they're crying out to God for help. Often it's a result of their own sin. And then I think following Joshua, we reach
Judges.
the book of the Judges.
Because there was no real successor for Joshua.
That's right. He had no
and they
successor.
needed leaders. So God raised up these judges, these people who God used. So like Samson was one.
Yeah,
There was
he's the guy with the hair,
Ehud.
cut off his
Yeah,
hair,
yeah,
and he's
yeah.
not strong anymore. Yeah, that guy.
He was the last one. No.
He was one of them.
Yeah.
Was
Shout out Samson, and shout out to the boys who have long hair. Pause.
R.I.P. Caleb. Okay, well, do you want to quickly explain kind of there's a bit of a cycle that happens in Judges, and there's a reason there's lots of different judges. So what's kind of going on there? Anyone could kind of jump in here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a cycle we see that begins where there's God's people, they're living in peace, and they're doing really well, right? But then what happens? They sin. They rebel against God because, everything's good. They turn to sin, which then results in God's punishment. So that will usually happen by, a foreign nation coming in and, just bullying Israel.
Yeah.
And then the Israelites are just crying out to God. They're like, God, why have you done this? Help us. God hears them. He remembers his covenant, his agreement with Moses, and he then rescues them. He sends a rescuer.
It's not that he
judge or something.
forgets it, and he comes back to remembering it, but it's more that he's honoring it in a way.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then we come back to the place of peace and prosperity, which then goes to sin, punishment, crying out to God.
Yeah. So
Rescuer.
there's
Peace.
a cycle of, God sends somebody to bring them out of trouble, but then either that guy dies or something goes wrong, and the cycle keeps going on. And then we reach this guy, Samuel.
Yeah.
And
The last judge.
That's right, the last judge.
The first prophet.
And then during the time of Samuel, the people of Israel, they see that all the nations around them, they have kings. And even though God is supposed to be their king, they want a human king. So they cry out to God for a king.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And who does God give them?
Saul.
Big of Saul.
Saul, yeah. Saul was a bad king. He was a bit crazy.
A lot of funny stories about Saul as
He
well.
was, he was a head taller than everyone else.
That's right.
He was a tall dude. But he was
Was he like could he go to the NBA?
Probably.
probably.
Probably didn't know how to play basketball.
Right, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Maybe not the right demographic
Maybe not.
either.
Yeah. But we see while Saul is king, we see David as a boy kind of being raised up, and we see these two competing powers because Saul is no longer backed by God, but God backs David, and we see this conflict between the two while David is kind of coming up
On the rise.
And at the same time, Samuel's role has kind of changed from judge to he's acting in a kind of more prophetic way, where he's kind of bringing God's message to the people as well, while there's still a king. So it changed a little bit.
Yeah. So for a while though, when David's kind of an adult, there's Saul is kind of hating on David. He's going around chucking spears at him, literally, all over the place. And then we come to a cave.
Wait, what?
Saul goes into the cave. Right?
It's a really important part of the story.
Oh yeah. Saul.
Yeah,
Saul.
wait. Yeah, actually, it is important.
Yeah.
Okay. It's important or not important? All right, tell us.
It's important for the podcast.
It's funny.
So nature calls. Saul goes to the cave,
He's
and
taking a
he,
fat one.
as the Bible puts it, he
Number
relieves
two?
himself. So yeah, he's taking a dump.
In a cave, which is crazy. So the smell would be really bad.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it must have been a really long dump. But David and his men are coming around, and they're like, Saul's in the cave taking a dump. Go kill him. Because then you'll be king. David goes in. He's crouching. He's been sneaky while Saul's just probably humming, doing his number two. It was probably really constipated. I don't know. Anyway, he goes up and he cuts Saul's robe, the corner of his robe, and and then skedaddles out of there. Saul doesn't even realize until later when David like confronts him, and he says sorry. He like comes to Saul and he's like, "I'm so sorry. I almost like tried to kill you, but I just cut the corner of your robe." And he's like kind of kneeling down, saying sorry to Saul, even though Saul's the one, you know, who's been trying to kill him the whole time.
Yeah.
And then David has the chance and doesn't. Yeah.
Damn. Great story, that one.
Yeah.
Gosh.
There's also like David and Jonathan kiss at some point.
No.
But,
Why?
yeah. Let's not go down that road.
Like on the cheek, bro.
Wait.
But David
Maybe.
on the cheek,
Maybe.
probably.
Doesn't say, probably.
But David becomes the next king.
David kisses a guy.
Anyway, and then we get and then no matter what happens there, we get a cool story from David, right?
You know what
What's the big? Okay, you want to say something?
I was gonna say the big point is David is a W king from God, right?
Yeah. Well, what's
kind of a W.
what's his big story about? Like the cool thing he did.
David and Goliath.
Yeah, bro. He like that's an aura moment. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. That's like
We'll get there.
David and Bathsheba. Yeah. No, that's earlier when he was just
when he's a
but
wee
a
little lad.
boy, but a boy, and he slings a slingshot at a big dude,
Yeah, knocks
and the
him
big
down.
dude dies.
That's pretty crazy.
You want to talk more about that? Or
Nope.
is that yeah, cool.
All right, but it's still clear that David is not the perfect. He's not the perfect king who's going to save them, because he sends the husband of a woman that he finds appealing, sends him to the front lines of battle to get him killed, and then takes her as his wife. So we see that there's still sin in David's heart.
Yeah.
Well, you know, after like he committed adultery with her, like he
Yeah.
saw her bathing
Yeah.
on the roof, and because he was king, he had the power to bring her to his palace
Chambers.
and you know, have an affair with her, and she gets pregnant, and he finds out, and so that's when
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
indirectly
He
gets
tries to
his-
hide his sin. He doesn't come to God.
Yeah.
He just tries to cover up, and then it's actually pretty cool. Well, I mean, it's not cool, but God spares David, but the consequence of his sin is that the baby actually dies. The baby did nothing but like 7 days of life, and then he's dead. He didn't do anything, which again points us to Jesus, someone who was blameless, died for our sins. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the passage you get a beautiful picture of like David saying, you know, he will not return to me, but I'll go to him, you know, and that God has, you know, like this child is now with the Lord, right? And David longs for the day when he'll be with his child as well. But yeah, God is endlessly merciful and patient with David, even though he doesn't deserve it. But there's still
has another
consequences of
baby.
his sin, and exactly, he has another baby, Solomon, who has a great rule. But then, as a result of David's sin, like everything fractures, and what used to have been a really stable kingdom and family line, everything just essentially, gets fractured and dismantled, and essentially that's the beginning of this massive downward cycle of the kings that continue throughout a lot of the rest of the Old Testament, that eventually culminates in the exile. And
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's move to that actually. So David has his son is
Solomon.
King Solomon. He's the
Means
guy
peace.
who asked for wisdom. Means peace.
He had many wives. He
Yep.
built the temple.
He built the temple.
Um,
Yet he was also still sinful.
Yeah, he disobeys God clearly, and then his son takes over when Solomon dies. Rehoboam,
Rehoboam.
funny
Big
name.
Rehoboam.
Rehoboam.
But he's got another son too.
Yeah, he had a couple of
Big
sons.
Jeroboam.
Jeroboam,
That's
yeah.
right. And
You know what those names mean?
I
Caleb?
should
No,
know.
no.
Okay, we have no clue. Dory.
Yeah, because then what happens is Rehoboam is in charge of the kingdom when Samuel dies. Sorry, not Saul. But only for like 7 days, or like a couple of weeks or something. Everything goes wrong. He imposes like heavy taxes. And then people from the northern tribes. So there was like northern tribes and southern tribes in the kingdom. The northern tribes are like, please be more
They're not
lenient.
happy.
Yeah, they weren't happy. So then we see a split. So like 2 weeks in after his rule, there's a split, and Samuel's other son Jeroboam takes.
Yeah,
Solomon's other son Jeroboam takes the northern tribes, and starts the northern kingdom of
Right,
Israel.
well, let's talk about that quickly so that we can get past it because it's not a very long.
Yeah.
So what happens to them basically?
The Syrians wipe them out.
Yeah, so
bit
they're
later.
in this state of they actually start worshipping idols, I believe, quite often, and they're warned many times through some of the other prophets that are around to turn away from that. But then ultimately, the northern tribe of Israel, it was called, is wiped out by the Assyrians.
And that was 10 tribes. There were 12 tribes we didn't cover earlier, but 10 tribes went into the northern kingdom and then got wiped out. 2 tribes, which was Judah and Benjamin, went to the south. But they kind of survived for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But not that much longer.
Yeah. And like, northern Israel is just totally unfaithful. And like you get this picture of how their kings, not a single king of them honors the Lord. And they're just totally corrupt and wicked. And it's just a really sad picture. And they eventually become, so the capital of northern Israel is Samaria. And so in the New Testament, you have passages like Jesus talking with the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4, which is really like radical because the Israelites hated the Samaritans and these kind of northern Israelites who essentially had kind of not really kept God's command to essentially keep the Israelite kind of line pure, and they'd kind of gone with the nations around them and been influenced by their gods and worshipped and served the Baals and like all these other different gods that were around them, right? And so northern Israel kind of like merged almost into the nations around them, and particularly when they got deported by the Assyrians, any kind of sense of national identity in their Israelite heritage really sort of became a lot more a lot more diluted, you could say, maybe. And they became just like the nations around them, in many ways.
Yeah. And then Southern Kingdom.
Yep.
A bunch of prophets kind of warn them, is like, you guys are disobeying God.
They're clearly not quite as bad as what's going on up in...
Or at least not immediately,
Yeah, that's right.
They're still disobeying God, but they come back to him, and prophets are warning, is like, guys, if you keep on disobeying God, he's going to wipe you out.
So what are some cool famous prophets that people might know? People like
Isaiah, Micah,
Elijah.
Yeah.
Elijah was Northern Kingdom, I think.
Oh, he's the Northern Kingdom.
Yeah.
I only know that because I was reading that earlier today.
Yeah,
so.
he's got a pretty cool story.
Yeah. But then we get Jeremiah and Ezekiel. It's like, guys, it's too late. We're going to get wiped out.
GG's.
Prepare for the worst.
And what are some of the themes that come out of these prophets? Like specifically with Isaiah presents this, in the latter half of Isaiah, presents this image of some servant who will suffer and take on the transgressions of man. So there's kind of hints of something's going to...
Transgressions means...
sin or iniquity.
Okay.
Yeah. Wrongdoing.
Wrongdoing, Yeah, like I think, for all this talk that we've done about God's judgment and that kind of thing, I think it's really worth noting that the Old Testament is a massive story of God's immense patience with his people, right? And with humanity as well. Which kind of started right back in the garden, that God didn't give them the consequence of death on the spot.
Foregoing it.
Yeah. And so with Israel, like even we saw in the cycle of Judges, like their sin and then crying out to God, and he gives them a rescuer, right? And then it happens all over and over again, right? It's this story of God's immense patience. And he's patient with the nations around them, right? And he's patient with the Israelites, despite the fact that our sin is so overwhelming that we don't even realize it, right? And so, there's these beautiful pictures in the prophets of God saying that, probably not a great picture is that God does tell them that they'll go into exile, right? As part of the consequence of their sin, that they'd been rejecting God so continuously as a nation for so long. But as part of his immense patience, he gives them hope. And actually out of that, he gives them these promises of this Messiah, or kind of this anointed king, this promised king to come, right? That actually, even though Israel had sinned so abysmally and so continuously against the Lord, as we all have, he actually, in his kindness, would send a rescuer, a deliverer, right? To fulfill his promises to Abraham, right? To be a blessing to all nations, and to eventually provide a way for not just forgiveness of sins, but also for kind of this idea of this kind of heart transplant, right? That God actually will end up giving his people a new heart, so they actually can obey him, right? And they can be forgiven. That they were forgiven beforehand, but so that they would not just be forgiven, but that they would be able to live in a way that pleased God as well, and live in restored relationship with him. But yeah.
Yeah, I think Ezekiel says that they'll write the law on the hearts of the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's kind of this shift in how things are going to work. It seems like throughout the whole Old Testament, God has his hand outstretched to his people, and that his hand never retracts, but rather the people aren't grasping
They don't
on.
take it. Yeah.
That's right. And so he's kind of his want is that the people kind of turn away from their sin, and he's basically giving them patience so that they might repent for what they've done. So, and in foregoing his sin, in their sins, in foregoing the punishment for their sins, he's kind of allowing them to do that. So we've got all those prophets, and you mentioned something about exile.
Yeah.
In
So during Ezekiel's kind of prophetic times, so Babylon comes in and takes them away. The Babylonians, come in, take them to Babylon. They're there for a while.
and this is the story. The famous one is Daniel in the lion's den. It happens during
In the book of Daniel.
in the book of Daniel. Daniel in the book of Daniel.
Thanks, Tian.
That happens during this time. That's a pretty famous story, you might know. And then what happens after that?
The Persians defeat the Babylonians.
That's right.
And they returned to their homes. They returned from exile, but they're still under foreign rule.
That's right.
So they're still not under their own king or judge or whatever leader
Yeah.
they should have.
Yeah, and even when they rebuild the temple, because it had been destroyed by the Babylonians, even when they rebuild it, there's this picture of the people who'd seen the former temple when they were kids, like weeping when they see the new one because it didn't compare. And you kind of get that in Ezra, in the story of them returning, and that kind of fits in. Ezra and Nehemiah kind of go together there.
The wall and the temple.
Because Nehemiah does the wall,
Yeah. But yeah, and so I think probably after that is you get this gap period.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
some of the
500
themes.
years.
Long time. Some of the themes I think are summarized in, like the book of Habakkuk is this prophet guy, and he's kind of crying out to God, how long will we be at the hands of the enemies? How long will you let them kind of reign over us? And then he kind of shares that in chapter 3. It talks a bit about his trust in the Lord to deliver them. And so we're kind of left in this period where how long did you say it was?
500 years.
500 years.
I think between 400 and 500.
Yeah, something like
roughly.
I know
that.
exactly.
Sure.
I saw that on the sheet and then I looked it up, and I think it might be 400 and something ish, but like same thing.
Point is long time.
But 400,
Cool.
500 years
I'm glad we fleshed that
before
out.
what?
Jesus.
So how is okay? Before we get there, let's take a break. Let's kind of look back, and what are some of the things from the Old Testament that have been pointing forward to something? So even let's start at creation, and sin, and we've got kind of you talk about the proto-evangelion, where it's the first image of kind of God might save his
Promising.
people, something, and then what are some other themes that we've looked at so far that have been pointing forward to something?
Yeah. Well, we got the promises from Abraham. He promises land, people, and blessing. We all see in Jesus. We've got like the law on Sinai and the priests.
Passover.
We see Jesus fulfill that as the ultimate priest as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We see Jesus coming from the line of David being the king, and God promising that there would be a king reigning on David's throne forever. And God promising that this deliverer would come from the line of David. You see all the way through the prophets. You see these pictures of the Messiah. We'd be looking at, particularly a lot of like what you might call the servant songs in Isaiah, which are just these like pictures of this servant of the Lord that would come, that would, kind of rule with righteousness and justice and save his people from their sin, right? You get lots of little pictures scattered throughout the Bible,
And even just like the prophets as well. Like Jesus is the ultimate prophet, priest, king.
Yeah.
Any power thing we see, Jesus is fulfilling that.
Yeah.
Right.
As the best form.
So we've had this big gap, and before we kind of get to Jesus, where does kind of the Israelite people, where do they sit, like geographically or politically?
As in during the gap period?
After the gap period, and when Jesus, what context does Jesus enter into when he's born?
Well, he enters into Roman rule, right? And so the Roman Empire was pretty massive, and the Jews were under Roman rule, and there'd kind of been these revolts by like the Maccabees, these guys kind of in the gap period. A couple of attempts to kind of regain some Jewish independence, but ultimately they were under Roman rule and authority.
Yeah. Okay. So we're sitting kind of Israelite people under Roman authority, still trying to. They still have the temple, and these all their Israelite practices still exist. And then we get this guy before Jesus even comes, or before Jesus' ministry starts. We get this guy called John the Baptist.
Johnny.
So what's this whole deal with this? Who is this guy? He's just a random guy. He eats locusts and honey.
And wears leather belts around his waist.
Yeah.
So you get this picture of in Malachi 4 verse 5 to 6. It talks about how before the Lord there will be someone who prepare the way, and he mentions in Malachi Elijah. Now, you get John the Baptist, and you're like, how the heck is John the Baptist Elijah? And the reason why you see in all these Gospels, John the Baptist described wearing all this stuff, eating that, is because Elijah did that. And what John does is he baptizes people, but also proclaiming that, there is one coming that he is preparing the way for.
Yeah. So we're getting there. He's like, it's about to happen, guys. You've been waiting 400 years. I mean, you've been waiting a lot longer than that, to be honest. But something's coming. And then he's kind of preparing the way for Jesus' ministry. But so Jesus is born in what we call 0 AD or whatever. He's born, and you probably all know the Christmas story. He's born in a stable. They can't find room at the inn, so they're with all the animals and then the shepherds, and then wise men come and see him. Anyway, we'll look past that. He lives kind of his childhood under his parents. We see some images of him when he's young, when he's at the temple talking to the dudes. He's like 12 at that point. But apart from that, we don't hear anything about Jesus until he's around 30 and he's going to start his public ministry. And so what's kind of John's purpose, and what's the first interaction between Jesus and John? And then we'll kind of move to Jesus a bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing Jesus does, like in Mark's gospel, it doesn't talk about his birth or anything. It just says that John's out in the wilderness. He's baptizing people in this river. And Jesus comes to him and says, baptize me. John realizes who Jesus is and says, no, I'm not fit to baptize you. And then Jesus says, do it. And John does it. But when Jesus is baptized in the water, something special happens. The heavens kind of open up. A big booming voice comes down from the heavens, and a dove comes down.
And he says, "This is my son, whom I love dearly." What else? What does he say after that?
This is my son, whom I love, with whom I am well.
With whom I am well pleased.
Listen to him, right? And there's this kind of beautiful picture of, probably don't have time to explain, but like what Christians would call the Trinity.
We'll
God,
do an episode on that, I think.
Do an episode.
Another episode.
Yeah. But it is this idea that God the Father has sent his Son, Jesus, and Jesus is empowered by the Spirit, who's kind of
The dove.
represented by that dove. Or I think the Spirit comes like a dove. I don't really know. Yeah, but like I think it's just that idea that all of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit is involved in this work of saving his people from their sin through Jesus.
And this image is completely new to Jesus. It doesn't appear God doesn't open up the heavens for anyone else and say, this is my son, in the same way that he's saying about Jesus. So there's something clearly different about Jesus. Let's move on. He has
quickly. Just you are my son isn't like God gave birth to Jesus or anything, but it's actually describing the relationship they have. Not that,
Yep. That's super important, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Jesus, he carries out his ministry, is proclaiming that. If you read the book of Mark, something about the kingdom of God is approaching. And so, probably shouldn't spend too long talking about all the different things that happen in Jesus' ministry. There's all these sermons he gives, parables, miracles. But one thing that he does make clear throughout his ministry is that he is going to die, and after 3 days rise again. And so I think we'll skip on to that point. We reach the night before Jesus dies, and I think it's important to stop there because it actually relates back to what you were saying before, the Passover. It's the night of the Passover. And why do you think it happens on this exact night that Jesus is going to die the next day?
Yeah. Well, I think like we were saying earlier, the Passover is this picture of God has this righteous right to judge against sin, right? And that our sin is actually so much more serious than we realize. And that's true for Christians and for non-Christians, right? And so God has the right to call us to account for that and for the punishment of that, which is death, right? But in the Passover, in the Exodus, you saw this beautiful picture of God saving his people through a sacrifice, through a substitute, right?
Mhm.
And when God saw the blood of the lamb painted on their doorposts, it was that the punishment had been taken by the lamb, and so God was able to pass his judgment over his people, right? So that they could be saved and delivered out of Egypt, right? And so in the New Testament, it's this incredible picture, I think, of Jesus becomes that Passover lamb for us, right? And so, central to the gospel is that Jesus is the one who died in our place, who's, if you want to extend the metaphor, like his blood is painted over us in the sense of when God looks at us, right? His judgment passes over us if we have trusted in Jesus and asked him to forgive us, right? His judgment passes over us and onto Jesus. And on the cross is Jesus taking God's punishment, God's righteous, good, just punishment for our sin, which is death. And incredible that God would take that punishment for us. And I bet in a million years, you couldn't have, one of the Israelites couldn't have predicted that that God himself, Yahweh, the God that they were worshipping and serving, God himself would one day step into history and be that Passover lamb for us, so that when he sees the blood of his son Jesus, who died willingly for us, he is able to forgive us because the just punishment has been poured out on Jesus, and for us there's nothing left except a restored relationship with God.
Yeah, it's a extremely beautiful image of sacrifice and love, I think, at the heart. And he's able to do it because throughout his life, Jesus lives a life that is without blemish, without sin, without kind of wrongdoing. And that means that he's able to, just as how the priests in the Old Testament weren't able to kind of in the same complete way intercede for the people because they themselves were blemished. But Jesus is, and you can read all about this in the book of Hebrews we talked about earlier, because he is, God and man, and he didn't sin. And I think you explained as well before what it meant when he died on the cross. And so he dies on the cross to take the punishment of man, and then 3 days later rises again, presenting us victory over death. This seems to kind of hint at what they were kind of talking about at the beginning in Genesis, right? If you think about the serpent as sin and death, it seems that Jesus has conquered death itself.
Yep.
By rising from the dead. And that's where Jesus' ministry basically ends. I mean, there's a bit of talk about what happens after the resurrection, and then he ascends to heaven with his Father, and
He's chilling up there.
that's where the Gospels finish. And from there, we get a little short bit about the years following that in his disciples and how the church grows. And then we get some other letters. I don't think we'll talk about Paul a lot. But let's just come back to Jesus. Having kind of looked at the Old Testament as a whole, look at the themes that have come out of it, then seeing how Jesus has come and fulfilled all the things that were promised and presented a new way for man as a whole, not just the Israelites, but man as a whole, the nations to be brought back to God, their relationship reconciled in a way. Where does this leave us today, 2,000 years later, after, it's 2,000 years after Jesus died and rose again? Where does that leave us? Where does that leave us?
Well, you see, there's this big story from the start of creation to now. And, we tend to think that, the Bible itself is just a big story and we're not part of it. But actually, right, like you're saying, Ethan, 2,000 years later, we're here, right? And so I think in that sense we get this big idea of the life of people who were under God's rule, but ultimately turning away. Humanity sucks. and now Jesus doing what he's done gives us a chance to repent or say sorry to God and follow his way. So I think in that sense, for us Christians or for us humans in general, right, we're all given this choice to come back to God and just repent. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's we're invited to be a part of it. We're invited to be forgiven. Well, we are forgiven by God, but we're invited to kind of accept the offer of forgiveness by confessing that Jesus has died to cover our sins as well.
Yeah. And I think, as we've been looking throughout the whole Bible, there's this really, it's a story about God and his people, right? It's a story about them interacting with each other and how that can happen. And in creation, we see that we are made as his people to give him, glory, honor, and power, right? We see that in Revelation 4:11. And that's, as one of our purposes, how we're made in God's creation. That's what we're still called to do. We're called to give God the glory, honor, and power. That's what the Israelites were called to do. That's what they failed at. That's what we're called to do and still fail at, but it's what we need to try and do. And that's what Jesus calls us to do before he leaves. He tells us to go and tell people about this good news, to baptize people in his name. And that's one of the ultimate ways that we bring glory to God and give him honor and power is by actually faithfully proclaiming the word.
Yeah. And for someone who hasn't accepted that, it seems like the dichotomy is pretty clear that we exist in this state where we aren't in a right relationship with God because it's been broken from sin. We saw that throughout the Old Testament, and it still plagues us now. But the message of Jesus is that we can, that relationship has been fixed by Jesus' death and resurrection, and we're invited to be a part of that. And so it's pretty clear you can choose to accept Jesus and receive life to its fullest, eternally with our God and dwelling with him, and he will be with us. Or the other option is to reject him and kind of say, I want to live my own way, and I actually don't think that life is, better than what I'm currently living. And so we're told that actually will result in what the judgment was promised to us, because we know that God was giving people a time to repent, but it seems that some people, they won't repent, and so God's judgment will be dished out on people. And so I think the choice is, it's pretty clear. It's accept Jesus or reject Jesus.
Yeah, and I think that if there was any doubt, the Old Testament is just one massive piece of evidence for us that we can't save ourselves, right? And that no amount of trying or striving to be good enough for God will ever fix it, right? The Israelites could not please God by their own efforts, right? Because they every time they kept trying, they would just stuff it up, right? And I feel that so strongly in my own life, right? I feel that that every time I try and please God, or do or live for him or whatever, I find myself so often, even as a Christian, just stuffing it up, right? Yep. And there's no part of me that by myself deserves God's forgiveness, right? And so the big story of the Bible that we've kind of looked at should be evidence to us that all of our salvation comes from God. None of it comes from us. All of it comes because of his grace and his kindness, which is undeserved. And yeah, trying to show grace and kindness to these boys right now. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You have to watch the
Yeah,
video for that one.
Yeah, all of that comes from God, and we receive that by faith, but none of it comes from ourselves. And so I wouldn't want anyone to have the impression that that we need to be good enough. That's what being a Christian means, to be good enough. No, that's not true. To be a Christian means to be a sinner, somebody who's rejected God, but whom God has died for in Jesus, right? And who has accepted that and received that by faith, knowing and trusting that it's his mercy that saves us and not our good works, right? And as Christians, we want to live out what that means. It's like that idea
Yep.
of God saving those people from the Exodus, right?
Yeah.
God saving those people from Egypt. The order is important. Salvation first, and then living as God saved people after that, right? It's
Definitely.
very similar for us as Christians, right? It's like salvation, God's kindness comes first, and now it's important that we live the way that He wants us to live. Not because it's going to save us, but because it's the only appropriate response, I think, to being saved.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it quite well. Quite all the things we've been looking at. Any other final things to add, just about kind of what we've been covering? Any final things? I thought Caleb kind of cooked there.
He was speaking my Danguage.
I think he was definitely
Speaking your
speaking
language, bro.
our
All right. Well,
language.
we are
Speaking
running.
your Danguage.
OT hella.
It's a long episode, but I think it's worth it because it's quite a
Yeah.
big story. I mean, there's a lot to cover. We did.
Mm.
So let's.
Unedited.
We have to pretend that Caleb didn't say the answer before for the game. We'll come back to the game.
Yeah, so, it's
So
game
what
time.
could that
What
answer
I'll do
ever
is
be?
I'll revisit. I'll read it out again for our
What?
listeners so that they can
What?
re-listen to it. So, again, it's office party intrusion. Security is breached at a high-profile gala. An incorporeal appendage leaves an ominous message, spelling doom for the entire corporation. So yeah, Caleb, you said it before. Do you want to tell us what that story is?
Yeah, I reckon it's the story of, is it Belshazzar or Belteshazzar? I don't know which
I think
one.
it's
it is.
Belshazzar. Oh, maybe it is
Belshazzar.
Belteshazzar.
One of them
Belshazzar.
is, one of them is
Ah.
Daniel's like Babylonian name. I don't know. I think it's
I think King Belshazzar.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Wait, where is this in the
This is
Bible?
in Daniel.
Daniel
Okay,
5.
So we're
if you're
still in
interested.
Daniel. We're still
Damn.
in Daniel.
Yeah, I realized
This
as I
is
was
the-
writing it, last week's one was also in Daniel.
Yeah, this is where like the hand appears and it writes like mene
Bro,
mene
it's
tekel
creepy
parsin
as.
or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah, many tekel pass.
it's like your days are numbered and
That's
yeah,
right.
all that kind of thing.
Judgment's coming.
Yeah, and so I reckon the answer is when Belshazzar
That is
gets
correct.
cooked.
They do get cooked. I mean, like that's kind of cool as well because where does that fit into what we're talking about before? That's the Southern Kingdom, and they're in exile to Babylon,
Yeah.
and then God is saying your days are numbered, and they were because they after that were wiped out, or
Yeah.
they were conquered. By what was it, the Persians,
Hmm?
the
Oh,
Babylonians?
sorry. Yeah. The Persians beat up the Babylonians.
Yeah. Is that the takeaway from that story? Is it?
I'm not gonna lie, I zoned out.
anyway, that's the story. That's the game.
At least we're real. We're real, man.
We got
It's okay.
we'll get the game.
Point
and-
is, thank you so much, Caleb and Jono, for coming on the podcast. Do you have any final shout outs or remarks you want to say?
No.
And this has been speaking my Dang.
yeah, I mean, just before we go, again, if there's kind of any thoughts that you had coming out of what we've been talking about, maybe you're more interested in who Jesus is and what he actually means personally for you. We really want to invite you to, if you know us personally, reach out to one of us. And I'm sure each person sitting here would be more than happy to sit down and have that conversation with you. Or if you don't know us, just reach out.
Damn, bro, my Insta's gonna blow up.
Yeah,
after
via the
this so
comments or
hard.
the Instagram or something. And we'd just
No,
love
it's
to
not.
talk about it. Because there's lots of big themes that have been talked about.
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely just running off what Ethan's saying. If you know us and you want to chat, we're happy to chat. And if you don't
100%.
know us or don't know how to contact us, there will be a Google form
Yeah.
in the description just so you can pop some questions in if you had any questions about this. I definitely did not know a lot in the Old Testament as Caleb cooked during this, so I think
Jono,
Just
bro.
you.
and Jono and Ethan.
Yeah,
Nah,
questions you want answered, questions you want us to talk about, topics you might want us to talk about as well can go in that Google form. But apart from that, I think that's it. Thanks, guys, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to talk about these
Thanks for
different
having us.
topics.
It's been an honor.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
See you later.
See you guys.
Bye.